Hey guys, today is March 19th. It's a Monday of 2018, and I want to talk about I've been wanting to do a video of how I handled myself prior to transition, knowing that I felt male in a female body. So I'm going to try to just summarize kind of my steps through life, let you know how I reacted to things in my life and what got me through my life, um, that kept me from a depression or suicidal. So real quick, I'm going to start with the beginning. Uh, Basically, I remember I'm 4 or 5 years old. My mom, we lived on a house on a corner on the hill. That's what I remember. And she said I was like five years old. My brother was a baby, so I'm 5 years older than he is. And I used to run around without a shirt. And so a little boy across the street, I used to play with him in his sandbox. And I remember one day I went to get him, and his mom answered the door and said that he couldn't play with me until I put a shirt on. And I said, why? And she said, because you're a girl. And I got really upset and didn't understand that because I thought I was the same as him. So I went home crying to my mom, and basically the only thing, I don't really remember what she said to me, but I do remember she sent me up the street to play with other kids. So I'm sorry, my dogs are going to start in. Hey, quit. Uh, so that started it. So felt that way all through. Didn't realize I didn't have a penis until we moved to California, and my cousin, who's 10 months younger than I, we were playing in the vineyards, and they had trees there, mulberry trees, and we climb them, and he had to pee, so he peed out of the tree. And I thought, I'm supposed to be able to do that, but I don't have that. And he said, that's because you're a girl. And so those kind of things happened throughout my life. The next dramatic thing that happened to me was I was 8 years old. I was going to church, and I used to walk all the teenage girls to their car after church. This one girl I had a crush on, she's probably 15 years old. And one night after church, I asked her to go steady with me. And she said, what? And the way she looked at me, I knew I said something wrong. And I said, oh, nothing. And I took off running and playing with the kids. And I knew then that I was different. And I just handled myself. I was very curious when I went to high school, and people would, talk about the girl athletes and name some of them as lesbians and stuff. And I didn't really know what they didn't say lesbian, but they would say gay or something like that. I didn't hear the word lesbian until later. But we had two PE teachers that were actually in a relationship, and they tried to hide it. But the girls would talk in the locker room. And then they had another PE teacher that was lesbian, and they would say how she used to look down the girls' shorts when they would stretch, da-da-da-da. So there was always this talk, and I was always curious about, okay, I like girls, and they say I'm not a boy, even though I feel like a boy because I don't have a penis. And so as I developed, I just kind of accepted the role that I was homosexual. I didn't know what else to claim myself, label myself. It wasn't until I took human sexuality in college. I believe it was Human Sexuality 101 or something like that. And things came out, and he played a documentary of the first transsexual male to be documented. And this guy was in Southern California, and he was a PE teacher prior to transition, and he lost his job transitioning. Hey, he had all the surgeries done. That's why they called him transsexual. And he had a couple relationships, actually got married to one person, and it didn't work out. And so what I remember of that is I just was like, oh, that's me. But at that time you had to live your authentic self, the gender you identify with, for a whole year without hormones, without surgeries, without anything, just psychiatric help and live in the role. And I knew that I couldn't pull that off. I didn't feel confident that I could pull that off. And so I kind of just settled in life to live the homosexual life. I identified with the female teachers. They took me under their wing. I never knew what gay was. I didn't even know what the relationships were. I just knew that I was attracted to females and I am called a female. Um, I used to tell myself they just don't see me. I used to pray to God all the time. I I didn't like the sermons that were talked about, homosexuality. I just couldn't believe the God I served was like that. And I just kind of started justifying myself through scripture and stuff and saying, you know, um, I know I'm okay. I mean, I know I'm okay. I know that I'm not evil, and I know that the way they describe going to hell, I haven't done anything to go to hell. And then when the preacher would preach Sodom and Gomorrah, I used to tell myself, there's got to be more to that story than what meets the eye. It's not because of homosexuality. I just cannot believe that. And so that's where I stood mentally with religion. I loved the Lord. I had a my parents weren't bad, but my dad was an alcoholic, and my mom sometimes they'd get in fights, and she was just as big as him, and I would have to break him apart because my younger siblings would cry. I'm the oldest. So it was a place where I didn't like to be all the time. So if I could be at school, I joined sports and I played the trombone throughout the years. I was always gone and into kind of like hiding myself away. I didn't hang out with any other female athletes that uh, might have fit the label of lesbian. I still just wasn't sure of what that was, really, honestly. And I just was being me. That's kind of how I lived. I got pressured into my dad's mother, my grandmother, kind of just told me and my cousin, because we were the oldest out of 10 grandchildren, that when we turn 18, we're supposed to be married and having kids. And I'm like, I ain't having no kids. I never ever imagined myself having a child, bearing a child. Now, I didn't say I don't want children other ways, but I knew I would never bear a child. That is not natural for me. And so I did end up getting engaged at 16, but the hype of it was because there was another couple that got engaged and they were talking us into a double wedding. And the thing is, the guy I got engaged to, we had no physical contact. We would hold hands, he put his arm around me, but there was no physical contact. The only time actually that he French kissed me was the night he asked me to marry him. And that was the same night we were getting pressure for a double wedding. So things didn't end up working out, of course. Actually, he ended up being gay, and that's why it worked so well for us. But I go through high school, and as far as school, my academic experience was very uplifting. I had fun, even though I yearned to play football. Football would have been my number one thing to play if I was able to. But I stuck with music. I stuck with being in church because it kept me away from home. That kind of situation. I'd come home and I actually had an old record player, and I'd play gospel music, and I would just be in there praying to God because I knew my life was much different than anybody else's, because I didn't know anybody else like me or that even mimicked a little bit like I did. of me. And I remember I was having a hard time at home. My mom was having a hard time with me because I looked so much like my dad. And she was just about ready to fly the coop, take us kids and get out of there. Um, my looks, my mannerisms, I guess. I got to where I got tired of breaking them up. The marriage wasn't getting any better. The kids were old enough to know better. Um, and I was feeling that's during the time I was feeling suicidal. It wasn't because of my gender identity or because I was attracted to females. It had to do with I'm tired of being an adult, and I'm not even an adult yet. But it only passed. It was something I just said. I didn't really think it through. Um, Sometimes I just felt it wasn't worth it. So one night I'm in my bedroom and I'm praying to our Lord and I'm just crying and I'm saying, I don't understand my life. I don't know why I was born this way. Lord, I don't feel wrong. If you were to come today and I was to stand before you and you were like everyone says and you said I had to go to hell because of how I felt, I would say, okay, Lord, I've loved you with all my heart, but I don't feel I've done anything wrong. But if hell is my destiny, I'll go because I still to this day don't feel like I've done anything wrong. Um, that used to be my prayer and my response to people when they'd ask me about my where I stand religion wise and stuff. And to this day, that's why I become unreligious and spiritual and still know that Jesus Christ and the Comforter got me through all these years because he was my best friend. So anyway, I'm 16 and I'm in my bedroom doing my thing and it was dark and I just started praying. I don't remember if something happened and brought me to this point, but I was just praying in the dark and I said, Lord, I know that we shouldn't need signs that you exist because we feel you in our heart and all this. I said, but I am at my wit's end. And the room lit up. It just lit up. And I could feel when when you're standing in the sun and you close your eyes and you get the red infra color and you could feel the heat through your body. I felt just an overwhelming brightness. And the heat I felt was a comfort. It was like and re-energized me. And from that day forward, I knew I was okay. I knew there was nothing wrong with me. I might be different. I might have been given a unique walk, but I knew right then and there that what's being preached in the church at people that are different from the regular or normal society that they see in church, um, I knew that I was okay and that they've got it wrong, not me. So I become a young adult. Well, actually, I graduate high school and I actually get into my first relationship, same-sex relationship with a church counselor of a sister church that we met at church camp, and then we reunited and ended up being the best of friends and just kind of like on the same wavelength as about God. She felt the same way that God was bigger than the walls are that the religion is taught, and religion is just what it is. It's a control. It's a it does have a foundation and it is good for some people, but it also they try to strike fear, and that's what they try to do with us, the young people, as we would become teenagers and stuff. I couldn't even listen to Jimi Hendrix because he was a Satan worshiper. I mean, really, it was that bad. And then with Charles Manson and Helter Skelter and all that stuff, we sure got preached about all that. Don't go into the world, and all that stuff. That relationship, even though I was right out of high school and she had 2 children and I had to grow up real fast, and she taught me how to do the checkbook and she taught me how to pay bills and she taught me how to be responsible, but she also taught me that the Spirit of God is greater than any man, than any animal, than any emotion that we have, that we all have a unique journey. And so that got me, through the years. That's what I'd always say. I was attracted to women, so that's the kind of things I had. I truly feel, had same sex relationships been accepted from the very beginning, that same sex relationships wouldn't be as a revolving door as they are. That they would take on the marriage and maybe some of the traditional ways of relationships. And even if it didn't work out, it would be harder to break up, and you would be forced to work more at it than what these people have. They can come and go, and I truly believe that that might resolve some of the revolving door in relationships in same sex couples, because they need, everyone needs a foundation. And when you're not secure because one person, maybe you've fallen in love with, like me, with a heterosexual female, but she loves you for who you are, there's always that norm at the back of the mind. There's always the scriptures at the back of the mind. And even though we lived 5 years like that, we still dated guys. So we wouldn't be called lesbians. But it was the most horrendous. It was a good relationship, but it was the one who put me up and down and swung me like a yo-yo. And but that's pretty much how I lived my life. I always leaned on Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. And I always felt that's where I can redeem myself. That's where I can re-energize myself. I made some bad choices. Not with the people I got with weren't bad people, but they weren't people for me. And then I did get with somebody who was really just not all together. And I really thought this person was it, because she basically was like a bisexual, but she was the feminine female that I was attracted to. And so I really went through a ringer with her, 2.5 years, and I tell you, flat me to a post. But that's how I handled my gender identity. I didn't understand. I always thought the transsexual, and I knew that I couldn't do the year, and before any, and I knew I didn't have the money. I made good money. I wasn't low on the totem pole, but I wasn't something that I could go out and buy a house with. I can maintain an apartment, and that's about it. So, you know, my faith brought me through. That's the one thing I think my family for, is bringing me up in a religion that had a comforter, that has a comforter, that taught me to lean on Him. And I don't think you're wrong if you don't follow a religion. I do believe there's a higher deity on this universe. There are things that humans just can't create, and something started it all. So I know what I felt through my life. I know that I've always been able to go to my Lord, and when I had no one to talk to, and there was many years like that. Even when I came out, and even now, I really still don't have anybody to really understand my relationships, because they're different. And my family loves me, and hasn't turned their back on me, but they don't understand the thing, because they don't live that way. They don't have a mind like mine. So anyway, I wanted just to kind of let you guys know there's always hope. As long as you're not hurting people, as long as you're not getting revenge, as long as you're not doing people wrong, just take it one day at a time. I learned lessons through those heartache years, those tears, people robbing me, not robbing necessarily, but taking me for everything I had, and me accepting them back 2 or 3 times. I'd come home and my house was empty except for my bed. And I've done that twice with the same person. So I was clinging, and it ended up, being there for a purpose. But anyway, I'm hitting 20 minutes on this. I've been wanting to share kind of what I went through and how my life spiritually brought me to where I am. You do reap what you sow. That's all I can say to any of you is you can back bad talk the way I lived my life or what I accepted. But the bottom line is, if you can't look in the mirror and love yourself, then there's issues that uh, you got to work on. Because the one thing I know, if the end of time is like I was taught, where it's the heavens and the earth is a ball of fire, I still to this day will look at my God and say, I've loved you with all my heart. I've believed in you. I've done nobody wrong. I've loved people. I've forgiven people. I've been kind to people. I haven't been the perfect human, and I've stumbled and I fell and I've picked myself up, but it's always been leaning on the Spirit of God. So that's where I am, guys. I'll get back to you maybe if I feel like talking in a couple weeks or so, but I hope you kind of enjoyed this. I had to rush through it because of the timing. Take care of yourself, really. You really are only accountable for yourself. And if you can remember that, and no matter how much you try to help people out that don't understand they need to be accountable for themselves, you're going to be falling down constantly because those people aren't stable. So be a good friend, be there for them, but don't put yourself out over it. Um, have your prayer, have your faith. Faith is what gets us through every day. All right. Take it one day at a time and always make your journey as simple as possible. We'll talk to you later, guys. Bye.